Hello again everyone, welcome to another video. My name is Jim. Today, hopefully, first of a few videos, I got a new rack. So let's start building my second lab. Now, as you can see here, I've already got my second StarTech rack all built and ready to go. I have installed a UPS in the bottom. This is a older generation APC SmartUps 2200, I believe, which actually has a network management card in the back. And the next stage of this is to actually get something to separate my lab off from the rest of my network. So first things first, for today's video, we're going to go overkill and install a crazy firewall. Now, those of you who have followed me for some time will know that for firewalls, there's only one vendor that I go to. Now, for those of you that have followed me for some time, it will come as no surprise that, oh look, it's a Sophos. Now, if you are looking at getting started with a home lab and you want to get involved with having a hardware firewall, my suggestion is to actually go on eBay or similar, wherever, and pick up an older firewall appliance. My preference on these, obviously, as you can see here, is the Sophos appliances, because you can grab these for next to nothing and they can be reloaded pretty much with anything you like. I will be reloading my choice with Sophos XG Home Edition, because it's a next-gen firewall solution that I know very, very well. It does everything that you could ever want it to do for a firewall solution. It is fully HTTPS inspecting, firewall and TLS inspecting, and in my opinion is one of the better firewall softwares on the market. And if you can pick up a second-hand appliance, why not do so? These four here, in all honesty, I wouldn't be buying an XG105. They are unfortunately Atom based and they're just a bit too old now to be any good. The XG86 is a good, small, very low footprint, very low power, basic entry-level firewall. If you need something small and just to do a small lab with, the 106s are now appearing quite regularly and they're pretty cheap. If you need to go a bit bigger, XG135s, or if you can find a 125, I would recommend the 135 over that. These, again, they're just bigger atoms in them, but they make very good starter firewalls. They are only gigabit in their throughput, but to be honest, for most places, that is absolutely fine. You don't need to be rushing around, jumping straight in with 10 gig interfaces when you are trying to learn how things work. Moving on down, you can see we have a pair of SGs. These are olders, but don't be put off by the SG moniker. The difference between an SG firewall and an XG firewall is the color of the screen, and that being an S instead of an X. That's it. The actual hardware inside an SG and an XG is identical. You can see we've got a 230 and a 330 here. The 230 is a Pentium, the 330 is a Core i5 inside. Moving on down, we have got the XG310 Rev 2. This is the newer revision to the one above it. And obviously, as you can see, the screen has moved sides, and being an XG, the screen is blue. These screens are orange. And then underneath that, we've got the XG450 range, the top one being a Rev 1, the bottom one being a Rev 2. And as you can see, as they go through the revisions, ports change and they add things in. Obviously, the Rev 2s and Rev 3 appliances are around. Every single firewall appliance you see here has been purchased off of eBay for not a lot of money, so that I can actually test and hopefully guide people in making a sensible choice. Now, obviously, for most people, running something like an XG450 at home is going to be an expensive way to run a firewall. Honestly, you can get away with running these. You can even get away with running a 135, and in coming videos I will go through and we'll power test and see how much we can push through these and how much power they consume. But for the sake of my video, you may think I'm going to pick the newest one. I'm not. I'm going to pick the one above it, and that will also be made clear of in a few videos time. But you can also see as well, as the products go down, I'm not stack these in any other way than to line them all up at the back, and you can see the different depths. That's how much bigger they get. The XG450 range actually has Intel Xeons inside them, so what we're now going to do is I'm going to pull this one out, get these all put back under the desk out of the way, and we'll have a look inside the XG450 Rev 1. And without all the other firewalls stacked on top and below it, this is the Sophos XG450 Rev 1. This is the largest of the Sophos XG1U range, and contains internally, when we pop the lid off, a Xeon E3 and lots of other fun things. So we'll get to that in a minute. As you can see from the front, we have 3 flex port bays. We have a management port, we have a console port, we have a pair of USBs, and we have a pretty LCD display that obviously, if this was running proper software, would allow us to do things. The flex port bays, as you can see, one is populated currently with an 8-port gigabit card. We can slot in some additionals, which we will get onto later on, but let's have a quick look around the back. Around the back you can see we have 2 bays for power supplies, we have the power switch, we have a VGA connector, 3 fans, and a USB port, and the serial number for the firewall. Nothing particularly amazing. Obviously only got 1 PSU in at the moment, might consider adding another one, but we'll have a look at that at some point in the future. Now if we open the top up, you will see the inside of an XG450, and what you have here in essence is a PC. Obviously custom motherboard, custom adapter modules that fit onto the flex ports, but underneath this shroud and underneath that heatsink is just a Xeon E3 CPU. We have DDR3 memory and a pair of SATA SSDs. These are a pair because they are normally run in RAID 1 on the XG450. The smaller firewall generation, so the 300 series and the 200 series, and below, down to the 100 series and below that, have a single hard disk in them. The 450s and upwards have 2 hard disks in them, obviously to enable them to stay running in the event of a hard disk failure in the production world. This firewall also has a off-board network card. This is just a off-board card for the 1 gig port in the front, because the actual mainboard does not have a network card built into it. We have additional SATA ports dotted around the board. There is a SATA port there should you want to put a SATA DOM in, so a Discom module there. If you wanted to boot from that, you could completely get rid of the SSDs altogether, but generally it's pretty much the same layout in a lot of firewalls that are this size. This chassis is made by a company called Caswell, and we'll get on to why that's useful to know in a second. Now, as you can see along the front, we have 3 flex bays. Each of these bays can take 1 flex card, and flex cards come in a variety of different modules as such, from multiple 10 gigs to 40 gigs to 100 gig modules where available. So depending on the firewall size, depends on what module you can fit. As you can see currently, this firewall has the 8 by 1 gig module sat there and 2 empty bays. So let me just show you then what we're going to fit into these bays. Now this is another 8 by 1 gig flex module. This is a 2 by 10 gig flex module. This is an 8 by 1 gig flex module, the same as the unit that's actually in this firewall. This, on the other hand, is a 2 by 10 gig flex module. Now, from Sophos, if you want to buy one of these modules, they are many hundreds of pounds. So putting Sophos Flex modules, unless you can find them already in these when you purchase them second hand, purchasing these second hand is a very expensive hobby. This is not a Sophos Flex module. This is a Flex module from a Checkpoint firewall, and as you can see, it's completely different in every single way, and you should never ever use these with your Sophos firewall. Wink wink. This cost £40. This is £300 and the rest. As you can see, they are visually identical on a circuit board layout. They are only different in their color scheme, but from the rest, they are the same module. But obviously, if you are using a Sophos firewall in production, you should be using these. If you're using a Sophos firewall for a home lab, well, why not? It also helps if you can get hold of more than one, which means you have multiple, but that one we'll come back to in a later video. Fitting the Flex module is as easy as unscrewing the blanking plate, like so, removing the cover, and then sliding in your module, pressing it home, and then screwing it back up again, ensuring that you don't obviously over tighten the screws too much, because there's a possibility you will want to get this out again in the future when you upgrade to its bigger brother. Now, just to demonstrate that these expansion modules fit in not just the 450s, they fit in the 300 series and the 200 series as well. They do not, however, fit in the 100 series routers. So if you are after anything for your home lab, if you're looking at getting a used Sophos appliance for use, whether it's going to be running Sophos software or anything else, and you want 10 gig networking, you will need to make sure that you pick up either a 200 series or above. Obviously for the 1Us and the 500 series, which I don't have one yet, you never know, has obviously got even, there's a 2U unit for the 500 series if you're familiar with them and above, and they can take even more of these expansion modules, but there we go. So we now have an XG450 with a pair of 10 gig ports, the standard 8 1 gigabit ports, and we are now going to load software onto this, and I'm going to get this loaded, ready to be configured as my new rack firewall. Now we are all plugged in. I have got a keyboard plugged in around the back. We've got a VGA monitor. The later revision 2 hardware and onwards has a HDMI port. But just to show, on idle, we're currently consuming 4.6 watts just without this thing running. I have a USB pen. On this USB pen is the software image for SFOS, which is the Sophos XG firewall system. The license for this, we will be loading an XG home license on, which limits a bit what this can do, but we'll do some trials with the evaluation beforehand. You can apply for your free home use license for the Sophos. I'll include a link down below, and I will include up in this corner, hopefully, a link to an older video of mine which shows how to burn the ISO onto USB pen, as you have to use a specific method, otherwise it does not boot. But all we need to do now is plug in, boot. I will hop into the BIOS if I'm quick enough, and then I will hop into the RAID controller, because this having 2 hard disks in there, I will create a little RAID 1 array using the onboard RAID controller on this, and we will see. Let's see, do I get this right first time? Yes, I do. And then we go around, because the power switch is on the back, and then I come back to the keyboard and start bashing the delete key, hopefully, to get me into the BIOS. See if I got it in time. I don't think I did. Oh no, there we go. So, as you can see here, we have got a Intel Xeon E3 something or other CPU. We'll have a look at that in a second. You can see we've got our 16 gig of RAM, a C226 chipset, and the date, today's date. But we have a 3.5 gig. Let's have a look at the CPU configuration. There we go. So we've got an E3 1275 V3 at 3.5 gigahertz, which is a 4-core CPU, which 8 threads. And in all honesty, we don't need to change anything in here, so let's quit out of that. And then we just need to make sure we get into the RAID controller on boot, like so, which is Control I on boot. Going to create a RAID volume. It can be called Volume 1. We want a mirror, and we're going to create the volume like so, and then we're just going to go down to exit. Yes. And then when we boot off of the pen's flashing away, we will hopefully get a nice boot menu like so. If you get a problem, so for the 450s it's not too bad. For certain SG and XG models this will work straight away. For others you may have to change the hard disk. I covered this in previous videos on using these, and I will do some updated ones soon. In that if the software image detects that you're installing on a hardware appliance, it will not let you install the image unless you have changed some aspect of the hardware. The easiest thing to do is to swap the hard disk out. So I'm going to go Y to that, let this run, and you can join me when it plays its pretty tune at the end. It's going to go through and do what it needs to do. And we have the pretty theme tune of the fleur-de-lis, I think it is, playing, courtesy of the reload on here, telling me that it's now ready to reboot. So out with the pen, Y, return, and the system will now reboot itself. To do the first boot, with its base image, that's wrong. Oh, it must be rebuilding. That's fine. And it will boot its way into Windows, not Windows. And there we go, all booted up. You can see we have 8 cores, we have 11 interfaces, which is correct, 16 gig of RAM and 223 gigabytes of space. And we'll let it settle down a bit, but as you can see we have the 8 interfaces, 9, 10, and then the management interface does count as an interface as well. So that's the 11th interface. So there we go, ready to be configured, ready to start operating as my new rack's Firewall to do some fun testing on, and we'll see how it goes. Now, this being an XG450 is a rather large firewall for most people. So if you are in any way power conscious, do not buy one of these. It is currently consuming 47 watts, 49, so 47, so around, oh, we're up to 54. So you can see how much this is consuming, and this is idle. So this is before there is any actual load going on the firewall. Yes, it's still firing up, but we haven't even enabled any of the services yet. So this is one of the things that is often skimmed over when playing with bigger firewalls, is they are not particularly power friendly. Even when they quieten them down, which this one is doing, it's still hovering around 50 watts, continuous usage. And once we start to get some load on that, which we'll do in another video, we'll see how much power we can make one of these actually draw when doing some routing at 10 gig, for example. Well, thank you for joining me. This is the start. The next video will be hopefully coming pretty soon, because I'm going to carry on getting these things up together. It's a bit long-winded to do all this all in one video, but in the next video I intend to be showing you how to start configuring your XG platform for your Homelab and to get to grips with it, and we'll start to expand out on some of the features that the XG does have and why I think they make a very good Homelab appliance, especially if you are willing and looking to learn at firewalls, obviously for an enterprise environment, because the XG platform, while fairly small in its stature, is very, very powerful and very widely used in a lot of businesses due to the feature set that it does come with. So thank you for watching. Please feel free to like, share, subscribe, all the normal stuff. Comment away down below with suggestions, ideas, always appreciated, and I will catch you in the next one.